And no matter what you do, your friends don't appreciate. You need to just and go down. Tell God, tell him, come on, please, Lord, I want you to see. When it seems that the doors of progress have closed in your face, and no matter what you do, your friends don't appreciate. I tell you what you do, and go down. Narrow way, it don't have no crooks in it. Since I started on my Christian journey, I found out that Jesus is my only friend. You know what, church? When I get in trouble, that's what I do. Tell God. Let me ask you this. Is anybody in the building? 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 Ever tried the Lord? Can I get a witness? Tell me, can I get a witness? Tell me, can I get a witness? If you call on him, won't God make a way? I wonder, can I get somebody that ever called on Jesus? My grandmama told me he may not come when you want him, but he's always on time. Let me ask y'all something. Is there anybody here that called on Jesus? Is there anybody here that called on Jesus? I'm going to ask you one question, then I'm going to leave it alone. Won't God make a way? 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 Woo! I want you to see. Amen. Praise the Lord. Grateful to be here in the house of the Lord just one more time at this great church. I'm grateful for your hospitality. But I stand honored and humbled for the invitation to come and share on this day to celebrate your distinguished pastor, Reverend Reginald Broadnax. Can we celebrate the man of God? Broadnax for a long time. I knew his name before I knew who he was. Because while we were in undergrad on the campus of Livingstone College, everyone would talk about Dr. Reginald Broadnax. And then when I entered into the halls of Hood Theological Seminary, I got to meet the man behind the name. And he ended up being my systematic theology professor. And let's just say that was a difficult season. But I made it through. Somebody say it. So what's true, when Reverend Allen came to my conference studies class, I said to her, now you can't mess up, because I'm going to tell your pastor. Amen. Praise the Lord. We're again grateful to be here, grateful for my wife and youngest children coming with me on today. Amen. I would ask her to stand up, but our baby, she seems like she's nodding off. Amen. Praise the Lord. I am not a singing preacher, but I've always found myself persons who have the ability to sing. Amen. And one of those persons is here with us on today. Wanted to come and share with us. Sister Jada, I want her to come, if that's all right, just to give us, bless us with the selection. And people before the Lord, amen. Praise the Lord.
Praise the Lord, everybody. Praise the Lord. Truly glad to be in the house of the Lord. Just sing this one song. Joy. Lord, I will lift mine eyes to the hills, knowing my help, it cometh from you. Your peace you give me in time of the storm.
God is good. He's worthy of all the praise and honor that's due his name. If you will join with me in the book of 1 Kings, 17th chapter. 1 Kings, 17th chapter. And you go down to verse 12. 1 Kings, 17, verse 12. I'm going to pull from the Common English Version of the Bible. It says this: "As surely as the Lord your God lives," she replied, "I don't have any food, only a handful of flour in a jar, a bit of oil in a bottle. Look at me, I'm collecting 2 sticks so that I can make some food for myself and my son, or eat the last of the food and then die." Elijah said to her, "Don't be afraid. Go and do what you said. Only make a little loaf of bread for me first, then bring it to me. You can make something for yourself and your son after that." She said, "I don't have any food, only a handful of flour and a jar, and a bit of oil and a bottle. Look at me, I'm collecting 2 sticks so that I can make some food for myself and my son. We'll eat the last of the food and then die." This afternoon, I want to preach from this thought: stay faithful. Stay faithful. Would you pray with me? Spirit of the living God, we ask now that you would decrease the flesh of your servant and increase the spirit of the words of your servant's mouth and the meditation of your servant's heart be acceptable in thy sight, that your people be edified and empowered to know that they too can do the impossible. Through the power of your Son, Jesus Christ, allow us through this word to leave this holy place better than what we came. In Jesus' name we pray. Let the people of God say, amen. This afternoon, as we are here to celebrate one of Zion's greatest theologians and pastors, the personage of Dr. Reginald Broadnax, I need to be honest with you and help us to understand the harsh reality that it's hard being a pastor. And I know most people have the idea that all we do is come to church once a week, preach, and go home. But watch now, pastoral ministry is more than that. Pastoral ministry requires you to stay faithful. To stay faithful, and that's a difficult task because the pastor has to stay faithful whether you come to church or not. The pastor has to stay faithful whether you have your class meetings or not. The pastor has to stay faithful whether you give your tithes and offering or not. The pastor has to remain faithful when you get mad and talk about him. The other pastor has to remain faithful when hard-working members are called home to be with the Lord. The pastor has to remain faithful when new ministries start and he's the only one at the interest meeting. It's hard to stay faithful. But even on the outside of the church, you got family life, you got trouble in the community, you got all these things, and the pastor has to remain faithful to their assignment. It's the mantle
mantle that God has placed on each pastor. And it's not an easy load to carry. But this afternoon, I want to take the time to encourage your pastor and to encourage you, because I need the church and the pastor to stay faithful. We need to understand one of the main reasons why we need to encourage each other to stay faithful in the midst of difficulty is because it confuses the enemy. Listen, the enemy is attempting to depress us. He wants to scare us and break us. But when you make up your mind that I'm going to stay faithful to God, the enemy doesn't know what to do with himself. Your faithfulness confuses the enemy in such a way he doesn't know what to do, because he attacks you to get you to react to what he's doing. But if you stay faithful, that means you won't react to the enemy, but you'll only react to God. And somebody here needs to learn to confuse the enemy. You need to stay faithful in the midst of your storm. I know it's hard right now, but stay faithful, because people are watching you. Everybody may not come up to you and tell you that they are watching you, but please know that somebody is going through a storm, and your faithfulness to God is giving them the strength. Listen, Dr. Broadnax, folk have watched you over this year. They have seen you stay committed and faithful, and people have been blessed through your faithful service. Someone needs to know you don't have time to quit. You don't have time to give up. You don't have time to throw in the towel. But in spite of everything that you're going through, you've got to stay faithful. Now, understand, staying faithful is still difficult and even quite complex. So allow me to deal with the text so that we can be empowered to stay faithful. In the text, we find the prophet Elijah. He confronts Ahab and tells him that there will be a drought that lasts 2 years. And watch this. God tells Elijah where to go. He tells Elijah to head east and hide out in the Kerith ravine, and on the other side of the Jordan River. It's there that he will be able to drink fresh water from the brook, and God orders ravens to feed him. Watch, Elijah is doing good. He stays put, but the text says eventually the brook dried up. The place in which Elijah had been living off of had no more resources. He followed God, and God did not replenish the brook. He simply allowed it to dry up, and Elijah had to stay in the place and watch the brook dry up. And some of you don't understand why God sends you to a place that's drying up. I wish I could preach it here this afternoon. Your pastor may not have this testimony, but I know some pastors in the Central Conference are questioning Bishop Monroe, trying to figure out why he appointed them to a church where the resources are drying up. Some folk got hired on a job where the company's resources are drying up. Your children are in schools where the resources are drying up. The resources are drying up. People are living in communities where the resources are drying up. And some of us began to be in conflict with God, because you said, how is it that you allowed me to stay here this long and you never replenished anything? But God, you allowed it to dry up. But listen, God helped me in the text, because what Elijah was only in this place because he was in hiding. And so God sent him to a temporary place, a place he was never intended to be permanently. Can I help someone? When Elijah was sent to this place, the brook was full. Some of you are mad with God because you remember the place that you are in now, and it was full, and then it started drying up, and you're mad because everything started drying up. But can I tell you, it was drying to let you know that your location was temporary. Catch this. As soon as the brook dried up, God speaks to Elijah. and says to him, get up and go to Zarephath in Sidon and live there. Watch now, God placed Elijah temporarily until he got his next place ready. Can I help someone? You need to get excited, because when you see things drying up in your life, that's an indication that God is getting ready for your next move. And for everything that may have dried up this year, you need to wipe your tears of sorrow and allow the tears of joy to roll on, because you need to get ready for what God has next. I know some folk in here who can be excited about the fact that God has something else in store for me. When I thought it was over, when I was ready to quit, God had something else for me. And I need some folk in here who can just take a second to say, thank you, God, that when things dried up, it was just an indication that he was preparing for my next. Well, look at the text. There are three things I want to point out, and I'll be out your way. When you look at the text, you understand to stay faithful because your plan is pitiful. The text says Elijah meets a woman and asks her for some water. He asks her for something to eat. The woman says, I don't have so much as a biscuit, a handful of flour in a jar, and a little oil in a bottle. She says, I plan on eating this last meal with my son and die. This mother's plan is pitiful. She has nowhere to turn. She is down to her last. She's planning on enjoying the last of what she has and then die. She has no other option. She has nowhere else to go. No one is taking care of her. She's left to be by herself, and so she devises a pitiful plan. I need to tell someone, talk to yourself and say, this is not the place to die. Listen, the enemy wants you so broken by your situation that you create pitiful plans. He wants you so beat up that you think the only thing left to do is to die. But listen, you need to say to yourself, I shall live and not die. You've got to remain faithful in this season, because God is not through yet. This woman watched as her resources dwindled, and her plans were based off of her resources and not her faith. Can I help someone out? Stop making plans based upon what you have. I know someone saying, well, that makes no sense. How can you plan if you don't base it off of what you have? Well, the reason you can't plan based off of what you have is because you don't know what's on the way. See, you're looking at the here and now, not realizing that God is still sending the increase. So your plans can't be rooted in what you have now. Your plans have to be rooted in your faith. See, your faith will have you making plans that your budget can't afford. Hear me. God is getting ready to send increase. Your faith understands that I don't have it right now, but God is sending to me. And I need some folk in here who have enough faith to make plans based off of your faith. Could you imagine if people planned off of their faith? You would have people depressed because they would understand that there's a better day coming. You would have people stressed out because you would know something greater is on the way. I dare you on today, when you get home, make plans based upon your faith. It's time out for making plans based upon what you have. We got to make plans based upon our faith and watch God do the increase, because we're planning by faith. Scripture says, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all things shall be added unto you. Paul says it this way, I can do all things through Christ which strengthens me. I wonder, is anybody here come to church to make some new plans? You looked at what you had and said, I can't do this and I can't do that, but now you understand, if I can just believe in the power of God, God will give me what I need. Listen, stay faithful, because your plan is pitiful, but your problem is a provision. text says, God has already spoken to this woman. So here she is looking at her situation and saying she doesn't have enough to fulfill God's request. Listen, that's how some of us feel. You're looking at what you have and you're saying to yourself, I don't have enough to give. But watch now, your problem is really a provision. Because the text says that the woman takes what she has and feeds the prophet. And as she does that, she does not run out of anything. She finds out that she has enough for her and her son to eat every single day. What was a problem becomes a provision. Someone needs to understand that in your hands, it's a problem. But in God's hands, it's a provision. Because God can take what you have and make it much. Don't believe me. Look in the New Testament. Jesus took a problem of a few fish and some bread and was able to feed thousands and had leftovers. You need to learn to stop calling what you have a problem and understand it's still a provision. See, it's a problem as long as it stays in your hands. It's a provision if you turn it over to God's hands. And listen, you need to know that if you put it in God's hands, He will provide. I need some folk in here who are willing to testify that my problem is really a provision, that God can take my problem and turn it around. I wonder how many witnesses I have who can just testify that with me, that God will turn my problem into a provision. I had a problem as long as it was in my hands, but as soon as I gave it over to God, God began to turn that thing around. I wonder anybody here got that type of testimony that as soon as I gave it over to God. Last thing, I'll be out your way. Stay faithful because your plan is pitiful. Your problem is a provision, but then your plight is purposed. Look at the text. After the woman is blessed, we find her son gets sick. Catch this now. The woman first deals with not having enough food. Then God blesses her. And then her son gets sick. This is where people stop believing in God. Because they can't understand why is it that God would seemingly bless me one minute and curse me the next. This becomes frustrating for some because they can't understand how this is even possible. But watch now, your plight is purpose. There's a reason for you to go through, because look at the text. Elijah tells the mother to hand me your son. And he carried the son up to his loft and lays him on the bed and begins praying. Elijah stretches his body over the boy 3 times, praying with all his might. He asks God to put breath in the little boy's body, and God answers Elijah's prayer, and he was alive. He picks the boy up and carries him downstairs from the loft and gave him back to his mother. Watch now, she gave her son sick, but she received him back healed. Can I tell somebody, what you give over to God will be turned around. What you give over to God will be turned around. This woman receives her son back healthy, but look at what she said. I see it all now. You are a holy man when you speak. God speaks a true word. There was a purpose to this mother's plight, because she still really didn't believe. After the first time God blessed her with more food, she had to experience loss in order for her to believe. And see, sometimes God allows us to go through things not to hurt us, but to show us who He really is. And that's why you got to stay faithful. I know it's hard and I know it's painful, but you got to stay faithful. And I need some folk in here who are willing to celebrate God in this place. because you know that the Lord will see you through. And is anybody that's excited about what God is getting ready to do in this place? You know He has a purpose for you. There's a place that you're in. God had a purpose for. He had a purpose for Elijah. He had a purpose for this woman. He had a purpose for her son. And there are times we don't understand what God is doing. But I'm so glad that Him trying to help us to understand that we'll understand it better by and by when the morning comes. I understand you're looking at God, trying to say, God, what in the world are you doing now? But God said, if you just stay faithful, I'll be able to do a new thing in your life. If you just hold on, I'll do something amazing in your life. Anybody here willing on today to just hold on to what God is getting ready to do? You believe that God will. Yes, God will. God will. Yes, God will. God will. Yes, God will. God will. See you through. I'm through. I just want to tell somebody, stay faithful. Stay faithful. Because God will see you through.